Hey everyone, it's the Foam Ranger here at Foam Ranger Sports. Obviously, more and more Christmas here because today is Christmas Eve, so hope y'all are having a great Christmas and a great and happy Christmas. Great and Merry Christmas, I should say. Anyway, let's get into this. This episode is just recapping the football season, looking at the stats and everything, and going over some news out of football. First of all, let's just recap the season again. They finished 9-5. Overall, 6-2 in conference play. There were 6-1 this year at home and 3-3 in road games and 0-1 neutral site games. Again, they start up the year with a bit of a disappointing performance at South Florida, losing 7-34 to start the season. Again, after being ranked in both the AP and coaches poll for the first time, being ranked at both in the preseason polls, like top 25. I think there were 24 in both of those, but again, it was an upset on the road at South Florida. A game where nothing went right offensively. Defensively was helped them out penalties and stuff like that, including a massive fake punt that our coaching staff and players didn't realize was going on, which resulted in touchdown for South Florida as well. Part of the special teams miscues that did plague the team off and on the year. Against Eastern Washington, they won their home opener 51-14 in that game. If I remember quickly, they had a miscue with like a blocked extra point attempt or mixed extra point and like a missed field goal as well, but still they dominated at home against the FCS Eastern Washington 51-14 in week 2. Then they had a bye week before they took on the Air Force Academy on the road, and they won 49-37. Again, another special teams miscue on a fumble by Malik Sherrod on a punt return, set up Air Force for a touchdown. That's part of how it was close. It was a bit of the Dylan Riley emergence. He had over 200 rush yards and like 5 total touchdowns responsible for in that game. So I look for him to maybe start the year next year as maybe a bit of a dark horse candidate for the Heisman. If he has a similar year next year to this year, he could definitely be a fun runner for the Heisman. Then they took on App State at home and won 47-14. Then they took on Notre Dame on the road, lost 7-28 again. A game the offense just couldn't stay out their own way with turnovers, with penalties that killed potentially scoring drives. Good defense again in that game. They played their hearts out. Probably one of their finer performances. Yes, they did give up like a few chunk plays, but those were like later in the game because of an ineffective and offense was mainly asleep behind the wheel. Not too many big penalties on defense. Majority was like holding or false starts on their offense and like a boneheaded stupid penalty on Latrell Caples on a late hit. Out of bounds play after we got a first down, or a sports-like conduct penalty on him after we got a first down deep in their territory, but that pushes back then like a false start and a sack later. We're outside of field goal range to start the second half. Then against New Mexico at home, we got the win 41-25. Again, special teams miscue happened, a kick 6, so back-to-back years, Stacey Collins' special teams unit has allowed a kick 6 in back-to-back years. In that game also, if I remember correctly, we had a botched field goal attempt and was saved on an Oscar Doyle pass, or I think it was Oscar Doyle pass to Trent Grizzle for a touchdown on basically what they call a fire drill, where something happens with the snap, it's not good, and they try to figure out a way to either get a first down or a touchdown on the play, and they got touched on that play. Then UNLV, we won at home, 56-31. on October 18th. Then, a bit of an uglier fashion, we beat Nevada 24-3 on October 24th. Reason why it's ugly is because our offense was really overall inept that game. They struggled to move the ball, and yet still put up 3 touchdowns essentially. I mean, defense really shined that game, despite the ineptitude of our offense to get yards and points. They held Nevada on the road to only 3 points, a field goal the whole game. Whereas a lot of the other teams we faced in conference play were putting up like 35, 50 points even maybe. I mean, all the other teams were scoring at will against Nevada, and we barely put up 24. And in that game, as I noted in the recap of that game, Chris Marshall showed his bad side, similar to what he showed at like the SEC schools that led him to get kicked out of 2 SEC schools and forced to go JUCO route. Like he had multiple drops. He had like 6 drops in the first half. And when Spencer tried to sub something in for him, he didn't go out. Then when he and Spencer talked about it, he was pretty irate about someone in for him. Threw his helmet on the sideline, and Spencer just told him, nope, you're staying dugout. Don't even come. You're staying in the locker room. Don't even bother coming out in the second half, essentially, because Chris Marshall, after that, fracas on the sideline. Around halftime, he did not even come out of the locker room in the second half to be with this team. He stayed in the locker room. And he was given a punishment for the next week, which was Fresno State. He wasn't even allowed around the team, period. Couldn't practice with the team. Couldn't do any drills with the team. Couldn't do any media sessions with the team or any team meetings. He was basically dismissed from the team for that whole week. And unfortunately, it was a game where we lost 7-30, and Maddox Manson got injured in the first quarter to further complicate things for Boise State. The next week, Max Cutforth played the whole game, got the start, and was a 7-17 loss on the road to San Diego State, a game in which Nate Potter really called like 22 runs in a row, which really favored San Diego State's style of play, and because San Diego State is a real talented team, real talented defense against the rush, and Nate Potter called to their advantage. I mean, yeah, it was a little rainy at times, but still, when Max Cutforth late in the game was allowed to pass the ball, he looked good in those opportunities where it's allowed to actually pass the ball. Then after that was senior day at home against Colorado State, and Max Cutforth became the first quarterback in program history to come out of the Treasure Valley to start and get a win since like the 90s, or maybe, since like the 90s or 80s, especially in the FBS era. Again, the Broncos shear the Rams 49-21. Then against Utah State, with a little questionable officiating, the Broncos did pull out a 1-point win. And that's what I'm going to preface. What I'm going to say is that we fell into the conference championship game. Did we truly deserve it? Maybe not, since this was arguably a bad year for the Maoist Conference in terms of it being more of a weaker G5 conference this year. Again, like UNLV finished like 10-4. Let's see. I mean, we finished 9-5. We went into that at 8-4. San Diego State finished the year. I'm just pulling up the score on my phone quickly so we can get a look. I mean, yes, there's still teams competing. Like right now, it's all 21 apiece between Cal and Hawaii in the Sheraton Hawaii Bowl with 11-14 left in the game. But in terms of like the regular season going into the conference title game, like there's still like 3 more bowl games, the conferences and involved in after tonight. I mean, Friday, it's New Mexico, Minnesota in the Rate Bowl, Miami of Ohio, Fresno State in the Arizona Bowl, and the New Mexico Bowl. It's number 25 North Texas against San Diego State. I think we're saying about standings, like New Mexico Right now it's 9-3, 6-2 conference play at the end of regular season. San Diego State was 9-3, 6-2. UNLV was like 6-2 and 10-3. Boise State was 6-2, 9-4. Fresno State was 8-4 overall, 5-3. Hawaii 8-4, 5-3. Utah State was 6-6, 4-4. Then the Air Force was 4-8 overall, 3-5 in conference. Wyoming 4-8 and 2-6 in conference. Nevada finished 3-9 overall, 2-6 in conference play. San Jose State same, and then Colorado State had a really tough year, 2-10 overall, 1-7 conference play. In which case, their starter quarterback, Fowler Nico Rossi, decided to sit out to get ready for the portal, and Jay Norvell was fired during the season. So a bit of a down year for the conference, and that's where say the Broncos fell into the Mountain West Football Championship game because of tiebreaker situations, especially with on the last week of the regular season, New Mexico beat San Diego State to pave the way for Boise State to play in the conference title game and host it on the Blue on December 5th, in which the Broncos won by 17 points, 38-21. And of course, recently I did a recap of the Bucked Up Valley Bowl and what was a bit of a really bad performance overall from the team, losing 38-10. I mean, Washington was really the better coached team, better prepared, and had a better hunger for this game. Boise State just not as much with the coaching, with the play calling, with the on-field play, Yeah, so that's the rundown of the season in terms of stats for the full season for the Broncos. We'll look at that quickly. In terms of team stats, the Broncos had 312 total first downs, 130 via the rush, 153 via the pass, and 29 via penalty. In terms of rushing yardage, 2,507 total yards. Again, Ashton JT last year alone had about a comparable amount. I mean, he just finished like maybe 20 yards shy of Barry Sanders' all-time record for a season. But a rushing committee had about as many rush yards as Ashton JT did last year himself. Again, 2,507 rush yards on 555 attempts, 4.5 rush yards per attempt. Averaged 179.1 rush yards per game and 29 total rushing touchdowns. In terms of passing yards, Max Cutforth and Maddox Matson, Oscar Doyle and Camp Bates combined for 3,429 pass yards, 274 completions, 472 attempts, and 14 interceptions by our quarterback room, which isn't really that good. Not really standard of what you really want our quarterback room to be at when it comes to throwing picks. They average 7.3 average yards per pass, 12.5 average yards per catch, 244.9 average yards passing per game, and 23 total passing touchdowns. Overall, the Bronco offense finished with 5,936 total yards of offense, averaged 5.8 yards per play on offense, and 424 average yards per game. In terms of returns, kick returns, 26 returns for 498 yards, 14 punt returns for 73 yards, 14 interception returns for 209 yards by our defense, 20 fumbles, 7 lost, 97 penalties, 832 yards. Arguably, at least since 2010, this was arguably the worst team in terms of being disciplined and committing penalties and getting the most penalty yardage. I'd say since like 2010, the worst team in that regard. The Broncos punted it 56 times, average of 43.6. They averaged 33 minutes and 7 seconds of possession per game. Broncos were 99 of 216 on third down conversions. Fourth down conversions are 19 of 37. They were 50 of 51 on PATs for 98%. And they're 1 of 4 for 25% on 2-point attempts. We're not going to worry about the opposition stats. In terms of interceptions recorded by the Broncos, Jeremiah Irby had 4 for 37 yards, 9.3 average on to 37. Amir McCoy, before he got injured, had 4 picks on the year for 82 yards, 20.5 average. He had 2 pick sixes and a lawn of 60. Buck Benfield had 2 picks for 37 yards, 18.5 average and lawn of 23. John Washington had a pick for 1 yard. Bon Phelps had a pick for 33 yards, which was a pick 6. Trey Tolmayer had 1 pick for 21 yards, and Gerard Smith had a pick for -2 yards. Again, Broncos 14 picks for 29 yards, average of 14.9 yards per pick, 3 pick sixes, and the Broncos' longest pick return was 60 yards. Again, Bon Phelps, Trey Tolmayer, and Gerard Smith are more younger classmen like sophomores or freshmen. Zion Washington, Benefield, Irby, and McCoy, I think, are like juniors or seniors, and I think McCoy could come back. I mean, Benfield announced for the draft recently, the NFL draft, so we'll see if he comes back or not. I think Irby still maybe has a year, we'll see, but yeah. So in terms of the upperclassmen had at least 10 of our 14, 11 of our 14 picks. In terms of rushing stats this year, Dylan Riley played in every game, 195 attempts, 1,145 yards gained on the ground, 20 lost yards, so 1,125 net yards rushing. Averaged just a hair under 60 yards per rush, had 10 touchdowns on the year. Londa 77 and an average of 80.4 rush yards per game. Again, the first game, he was more, and going into the season, he was sought as like RB3 or RB4 behind or competing with Breezy Dubar for like RB3 behind like Sarah Gaines and Malik Sherrod, but ultimately Dylan Riley turned out to be the playmaker and the difference maker when it came to being a rusher. Sarah Gaines playing every game, he had 661 yards, 161 attempts I should say, gain of 832 yards, a loss of 21 yards, and 811 net yards per rush. Had average 5 yards per rush, 8 rushing touchdowns on to 46, and an average of 57.9 yards per game. Malik Sherrod played every game, 85 carries for 446 gained yards, 28 lost yards, and 418 net yards. Average 4.9 yards per rush, 4 touchdowns, a line of 44, and a hair under 30 yards per game. Mannix Madsen, via the scramble, had 57 attempts for 203 gained yards, 122 lost yards, and net of 81. Average 1.4 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns on the ground, 25 was the lawn, and 7.4 average per game. Cam Bates had 6 carries for 78 yards, average of 13, 2 touchdowns, a lawn 35, and about 5.6 average yards per game. Seth Knott played in 10 games, only 12 carries, 51 yards total, 4.3 yards per carry, 1 touchdown, long 9 yards, and 5.1 average per game. Quentin Brown had 4 carries for 26 yards, gained 1 lost yard, 25 net yards, 6.3 yards per carry, long of 12, and hair under 2 yards per game. Breezy Dubar only played in 4 games before he essentially called it a career at Boise State, because I think it was before like the Colorado State senior game it was announced that he was going to enter the transfer portal when it officially opens in January 2nd. So Breezy's career at Boise State is done this season. He only had 3 carries for 12 yards, average of 4, lawn of 7, and average of 3 yards per game. The Troll Capels had a gain, or 1 carry for negative 4 yards on the season. Max Cutforth had 17 carries, gain of 13, loss of 86 for a net negative 73 yards, and negative 4.3 yards per carry. Lawn of 8, negative 6.6 yards per game. In terms of passing stats, Maddox Madsen played 11 games. His key efficiency rating was 136.9, 176 completions, 302 attempts, and 9 picks, which really isn't that good. As starting 9 picks, including some that were returned for touchdowns. He only completed 58.3% of his passes this year. Not what you're hoping for. The preseason Mountain Conference Player of the Year is someone who was supposed to take a massive leap forward going into this year. Going into this fall ball as a projected starter, working with the ones extensively. Working with QB guru Zach Hill. And having Matt Miller as wide receiver coach, you would have thought there would have been much better offensive pass production, but unfortunately there wasn't. He finished with 2,304 passing yards, 18 touchdowns, a line of 75, and an average of 212.2 pass yards per game. Max Cutforth played 11 games. He had an efficiency rating of 112.1. 95 completions on 167 attempts of 5 picks. Again, 3 of those were in the bowl game. Because when he came in the second half again, it really was more passing situations since we were down 24 to 7, 24 to 3 at that point. So we were forced to really rely on the air game more so than the run game in the second half of that bowl game. That's why he threw 3 picks in the second half. Finished with a 56.9% completion percentage, 1,059 pass yards, 4 interceptions, 4 touchdowns, and 66 yards was his longest pass, and he averaged 96.3 pass yards per game. Oscar Doyle was 2 of 2 on the season as a passer. Again, one of those was on a fake punt, and the other was on that aforementioned bad snap on a field goal attempt at home against New Mexico. He had 21 total yards, passing 1 touchdown, 1 passing touchdown, line of 11. And Cam Bates completed his only pass attempt for 15 yards. In terms of receptions, I'll also look at the score because I think the score does do a better job of, listing targets. Actually, maybe ESPN will do even better in terms of, looking at the drops for receiving core, because this year there was a higher number of drops than you really would have preferred. I'm just looking at the ESPN app because maybe that might show better. Yeah, ESPN, just like the Bronco Sports page, just mainly shows just the main stats and doesn't show targets or drops. But I'll look at the score, maybe that might show more for receivers. Well, the score doesn't show drops, but it does show targets. So the Troll Caples on the season finished with 51 catches for 617 yards to lead the receiving room. Averaged 12.1 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns, 44.1 yards per game. Had a touchdown at 5.9% of his catches, was targeted 91 times on the season. Now Louder had a bit of a quieter year this year than last year. Only 37 catches, 330 total receiving yards, average 8.9 yards per catch. Only 2 touchdowns, 25.4 yards per game. Had a touchdown reception on 5.4% of his catches. 59 targets as well. Chris Marshall had 30 catches for 574 yards, 19.1 average per catch. 2 touchdowns and averaged 52.2 yards per game. Had touchdown catch on 6.7% of his catches and was targeted 68 times. Chase Penry, who turned out to be more of an impact player towards the end of the season because of some injuries to some receivers, particularly Ben Ford. He finished the year with 30 catches as well for 394 yards, 13.1 yards per catch, 1 catching touchdown, 1 receiving touchdown, 28.1 yards per game. Had a touchdown catch on 3.3% of his catches and was targeted 45 times. Malik Sherrod had 28 catches for 250 yards, averaged 8.9 yards per catch, 2 receiving touchdowns, 17.9 yards per game. Receiving, had a touchdown on 7.1% of his catches and targeted 37 times. Matt Wagner, 23 catches, 246 yards, 10.7 yards per catch, 1 touchdown, 17.6 yards per game. He had a touchdown reception on 4.3% of his catches and 35 targets on the season. Before Ben Ford got injured, he had 21 catches for 325 yards, averaged 15.5 yards per catch, 5 touchdowns, 46.4 yards per game. He had a touchdown on 23.8% of his receptions. It was only targeted 32 times. Cam Bates had 18 catches for 307 yards, 17.1 yards per catch, 1 touchdown at 21.9 yards per game receiving. Touchdown reception on 5.6% of his catches and 39 targets. Dylan Riley had 15 catches for 149 yards, 9.9 yards per catch, 2 receiving touchdowns, 10.6 receiving yards per game. Had a touchdown reception on 13.3% of his catches and 20 targets. Sar Gaines finished with 11 catches for 72 yards, 6.5 yards per catch, 1 touchdown, 5.1 yards per game. Had a touchdown catch on 9.1% of his catches and 15 targets. Quentin Brown had 6 catches on the season for 122 yards, averaged 20.3 yards per catch, 2 receiving touchdowns, and averaged 8.6 yards per game. Against some games he wasn't even throwing the ball to at all. But he looks like, again, I think he's like a freshman this year. Either true or redshirt, so he's making a case that maybe next year he might have a more pronounced and bigger role on the team as a receiver. He finished, well, he had 33.3% of his catches resulted in a touchdown, and he only was targeted 9 times on the year. Demetric Whitlock had 2 catches for 26 yards, average of 13 at 3.3 yards per game. Again, he got injured early on the season and was done for the year after he got injured. He only had 4 targets. Troy Grizzle had a catch for 10 yards and a touchdown. Again, was on that botched field goal attempt against New Mexico when they did the fire drill. And Luke Voorhees had a catch for 7 yards on 3 targets this season. So that's the stats for the season. In terms of Colin Boomer, he was 11 of 15 from field goals, 46 of 47 on PATs. Keenan Moore was also 1 of 2 from field goals and was 4 of 4 in his point after touchdowns. Colin Boomer on his field goals was 5 of 5 from 20 to 29, 2 of 2 from 30 to 39, 1 of 5 from 40 to 49, and perfect 3 of 3 from 50 to 99 yards. His longest was 52. He had 1 block kick. Keenan Moore again, 1 of 2 from field goal range. He was 0 for 1 from 20 to 29 yards. It was 1 of 1 for 30 to 39, line of 35. Oscar Doyle on the season at 56 punts for 2,440 yards, 43.6 average per punt, line of 59, 5 touchbacks, 17 aside 20, 7 that are 50 plus. In terms of score per period, Boise State really did their damage in the first and fourth quarters. Again, in the first quarter, the Broncos generally outscored their opponents 113 to 50. Second quarter was a bit of the opposite. They put up 116 total points in the second quarter, but allowed 133. Third quarter was a weird one for Boise State. They outscored their opponents 74 to 72 in third quarter. Fourth quarter, they had decisive advantage, 115 points scored in the fourth quarter this season compared to 82 for their opponents. And they did not play a single overtime game this year. Broncos scored 418 total points and only gave up 337 points on the season. In terms of defense, Buck Benefield had 70 solo, 37 assisted, 107 total tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss for 25 yards. Also had 2 picks for 37 yards, 4 pass breakups, 1 QB hurry, had 1 fumble recovery, and 1 forced fumble. Marco Notriani, 51 solo, 26 assisted, 77 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss for 34 yards, 2.5 sacks for 24 yards. 2 pass breakups, 8 QB hurries, and 1 fumble recovery for no yards. Zion Washington had 41 solo, 25 assists for 66 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss for 13 yards, including 1 sack for 11 yards. 1 pick for 1 yard, 2 pass breakups, and 1 QB hurry. Bone Phelps had 47 solo, 19 assisted, 66 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss for 14 yards, including a sack for 7 yards, 1 interception for 33 yards, 5 QB hurries, 1 fumble recovery for no yards, and a forced fumble. Jeremiah Irby on the year had 40 solo tackles, 20 assisted, 60 total tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss for 5 yards, including half a sack for 4 yards. Had 4 interceptions for 39 yards, 9 pass breakups, and a fumble recovery for no yards. Jane Virgin Morgan, 26 solo, 30 assisted for 56 total tackles, 13 tackles for loss of 45 yards, including 6 sacks for 31 yards, 13 QB hurries, 1 fumble recovery, and 2 forced fumbles. Jake Rip had 20 solo, 23 assisted for 43 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss for 9 yards, 3 QB hurries, and 1 fumble recovery. Jaden Mickey, after not playing the first game, had 32 solo, 6 assisted, and 38 total tackles for 7, including 7 tackles for 29 yards, including a sack for 12 yards, 5 QB hurries, 5 pass breakups, 2 QB hurries, 1 fumble recovery, and 2 forced fumbles on the season. Ray McCoy in 10 games had 16 solo, 11 assisted, 27 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 21 yards, including half a sack for 3 yards, 5 QB hurries, 1 forced fumble. Dirk Ganter Jr., 17 solo, 10 assisted, 27 total tackles, including half a tackle for a loss for a yard. Braxton Feely had 7 solo, 17 assisted, 24 total tackles along with 6.5 tackles for a loss for 41 yards, 5.5 sacks for 40 yards, 5 QB hurries, and 1 block kick. And he blocked a kick this year. Deion Washington had 5 solo, 9 assisted, 14 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss for 3 yards, including a sack for 1 yard. Gerard Smith had 9 solo, 5 assisted, 14 total tackles, including half a tackle for a loss for a yard. He also picked off a pass for 2 yards and had 6 pass breakups. Lopez Sanusi had 7 solo, 6 assists for 13 total tackles, including a sack for 5 yards. Michael Madry, 9 solo, 3 assisted, 12 total tackles, including 1.5 tackles for loss for 4 yards. Malachi Williams had 5 solo, 6 assisted for 11 total tackles, including 4 tackles for loss for 11 yards, 2.5 sacks for 9 yards, 7 QB hurries, and a forced fumble. Roman Kaywood had an impressive first year with the Broncos. I think this was either true or redshirt freshman year. He had 7 solo, 4 assisted for 11 total tackles, including 3 tackles for loss for 7 yards, half a sack for 3 yards, with 1 pass breakup, 1 QB hurry, 1 forced fumble. Davon Banks only played 6 games this year. He also, I think, entered the transfer portal as well after he significantly lost playing time to Jaden Mickey. He finished with 5 solo, 5 assisted, 10 total tackles for 1.5 tackles for 5 yards lost, including a pass breakup and a QB hurry. David Latu, 4 solo, 5 assisted, 9 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss for 8 yards, including a sack for 6 yards. Franklin Johnson Jr. had 5 solo, 3 assisted, 8 total tackles. Samuel Brooks, as another newcomer this year, had 6 solo, 2 assisted, 8 total tackles. Sterling Lane II only played 8 games due to injury, had 6 solo tackles, including 3 sacks for 16 yards and 1 QB hurry in his first year as a Bronco. Demetrius Freeney had 6 solo tackles as well, including a forced fumble. Travis Anderson had 5 solo, 1 assisted, 6 total tackles, including 1 pass breakup. Mana Tuioti had 2 solo, 4 assisted, 6 total tackles, including 1 pass breakup and 2 fumble recoveries. Keanu Mayoto had 4 assisted tackles and 1 pass breakup. Dylan Riley had 3 solo, 1 assisted, 4 total tackles on some turnovers. Jose Alanis had 3 solo tackles. Arthur DiBioshi, as a true freshman, I believe, this year, or a redshirt freshman, had 2 solo, 1 assisted, and 3 total tackles. Of note, Jose Alanis only played in 6 games. Malik Sherrod had 2 solo tackles off of our turnovers. Cam Bates had 1 solo, 1 assisted, 2 total tackles off of our turnovers. Sincere Brackett Lambie in his first action this year with the Broncos. 2 assisted tackles for half a tackle for loss for no yards. Luke Voorhees had an assisted tackle again coming off of a Bronco turnover. Colton Boomer had an assisted tackle on special teams. Cole Miller had a solo tackle. Clay Martineau only played in 3 games before he got injured, and soon after, a few weeks ago, a week or two ago, I'll do more of a breakdown once when all the portal stuff is done, but he did announce in the past couple weeks that he will be entering the portal as well. He finished with the solo with an assisted tackle and half tackle for loss for 1 yard. Also, Cole Miller had a pass breakup as well. Bull played in 10 games, but he did register a solo tackle, which was a sack for 8 yards. And Trey Tolmere, in his first year as a Bronco, only played in 3 games, and he did have a interception for 21 yards. And I think once again, Bronco Nation made a difference at home. I think they led the nation again in false starts caused at home games. And I think, that Boise State almost sold out every game this year again. The Mountain Conference Championship was going to be a tough stretch because they only found out about it that Sunday. So they only really had like 5 days to sell tickets to it. Again, was December 7th, and that's when a lot of companies are doing parties, like holiday parties. Families are trying to iron out finalized plans or try to meet up, stuff like that. So that was a bit tough. So the sellout streak snapped. But I would say, that Boise State at home games average at least 30,000 fans this year. In terms of red zone offense, Broncos were 44 of 53 in the opponent red zone, so the Broncos scored on 83%, 274 points, 36 touchdowns, 22 via the rush, 14 via the pass, and 8 field goals. Broncos missed a field goal from inside the opponent's red zone. They also turned it over on downs 4 times, threw 2 picks in the red zone, and found the ball twice in the red zone. Again, those 2 interceptions came in the South Florida game. Those 2 fumbles did. Defensively, we only have 4 times we denied an opponent from scoring in the red zone. Opponents were 91.7% at scoring from in the red zone, 44-48. "36 of those 44 scores by the opponents in our red zone were via touchdown, 23 via the rush, 13 via the pass. Opponents were 8 of 8 on field goals inside. 8 of 9 on field goals. 8 of 16, I should say, on field goals from inside our red zone. They missed 8 field goals and had 4 turnovers of downs, but we could not get a pick or fumble inside our red zone on defense. In terms of game highs for the Broncos, we attempted 54 rushes against New Mexico, 328 total yards rushing against Eastern Washington, 9.1 yards per rush at Air Force, 6 rushing touchdowns against Colorado State. In terms of passing, 49 pass attempts at Utah State was a game high. Season 27 completed passes at South Florida, 341 passing yards at Utah State, 11.5 yards per pass at Air Force, and there was a tie for touchdown passes at 4 against UNLV and App State at home. Total plays, 95 Utah State. Total offense, 637 at home against Eastern Washington. Yards per play, 10.2 at the Air Force. Points, 56 against UNLV. And we had a tie in terms of sacks by the Broncos with 5 against Washington and App State. Got 32 first downs against Colorado State, 13 penalties at Notre Dame, 112 penalty yards at Notre Dame, 5 turnovers we committed versus Washington. Actually, I think there was sacks given up, 5. Yeah, sacks allowed by our O-line, 5 was a high, twice versus Washington in the bowl game and App State. 5 turnovers was also the highest amount we gave up against Washington. We also punted 7 times at San Diego State and home against Fresno. 53.5 punting yards average against Eastern Washington. Longest punt of 59 was done at Eastern Washington. 3 punts aside the 20, 3 of those at San Diego State. And the longest punt return given up, or longest punt return had, was 17 yards against UNLV. Game lows, rushes 28 versus Washington, yards rushing 58 versus Washington, 2.1 yards per rush, which was versus Washington, 0 touchdown rushes versus Washington, Fresno State, App State, and at South Florida, 18 pass attempts at San Diego State, 12 pass completions at San Diego State, 102 yards passing against Fresno State, 3.1 yards per pass against Fresno State, 0 touchdown passes between Colorado State, at San Diego State, and Nevada, and at Notre Dame. 57 total offensive plays against UNLV, 193 total offensive yards at home against Fresno, 3.1 yards per play against Fresno State, 7 points against on the road at San Diego State, against Fresno State, and Notre Dame, and at South Florida. Sacks given up, 0 at San Diego State, Fresno State, and Notre Dame. 11 first downs versus Fresno, 2 penalties at Nevada, 10 penalty yards in Nevada. That was our cleanest game in terms of not committing penalties. And we have multiple games where we didn't get an interception. Against Washington, UNLV, at Utah State, at San Diego State, Fresno State, at Notre Dame, and at South Florida. Those games we did not get an interception. Punts, 2 New Mexico, 2 at Air Force, 2 at Eastern Washington, 2 versus Eastern Washington. Punting average 38.8 yards per punt at Notre Dame. Longest punt of 42 yards against UNLV. Punts aside the 20, 0 versus Washington at Notre Dame and at South Florida. Long punt return, 0. Colorado State, Fresno State, and Nevada, and Notre Dame, App State, at South Florida. I'm not going to worry about the opponents stuff, yeah, so again, the Broncos did meet at least one of their goals this year, which was to win the conference. Unfortunately, they failed to win the bowl game and failed to make the CFP. I mean, yeah, this was a bit of a, not as challenging, but still a bit of a challenging non-con. Again, with the South Florida to start the year, all the way on the other side of the country. Eastern Washington FCS at home again, but then we had to play on the road at a real good Notre Dame and hosted a pretty good App State team that was known for having a really high octane passing offense, and we limited that. But overall, though, like 9-5 season, win the Mountain West Conference, in a down year, complete a historic three-peat as conference champion. So yeah, you can celebrate that. Go 6-2 against conference opponents. But again, really poorly showed on the gridiron against Notre Dame, against Fresno in a rivalry game, on the road at San Diego State, and on national television in the bowl game against Washington. Again, those, especially like the rivalry game, that's the third time in a row we lost to Fresno in the battle for the milk can. Again, those big time matchups against power conference teams, we have overall non-competitive, which is not what you want if you're a Boise State fan, because part of our standard going back to the early 2000s was not only being competitive those games, especially without Ashton Jainty, but also win those games. Again, we are the Davids. Again, part of our bread and butter and part of our standard and how people remember us by was being the Goliaths of Oklahoma in the 2006 Fiesta Bowl, winning on the road in Kellen's first true road game as a freshman. Beating Oregon at home. Beating Oregon State at home and on the road when they're a Pac-12 opponent. Beat Washington on the blue. Winning at Virginia. Beating Virginia Tech in a neutral site game. Beating Georgia in a neutral site game. Being competitive against Ole Miss in 2014. Beating Arizona in the Fiesta Bowl. And last time we beat a power conference team was in 2019 in the Hurricane Hank game. Ever since then, overall, we've been more non-competitive. More blowouts in anything else. So we really need to get that fixed. We need to get that fixed stat. In terms of coaching, it does rest on coaching. On that note, it was announced last night at 10:30 p.m. that originally broke by BJ Rains of Bronco Nation News in a VIP article on 247sports.com that wide receiver coach Matt Miller is leaving Boise State University. He is done being a wide receivers coach at Boise State, and further reports are showing from multiple sources that he will join his fellow teammate Kirby Moore at Washington State, along with Brandon Thompson and Brad Larondo. So now Boise State is going to be searching for a new wide receiver coach, and I think we need to get someone from outside the family tree, some new, has some experience being a wide receivers coach at the power conference level, with the upper echelon. Someone who can bring that experience and the wisdom down to us to help us elevate our wide receiver play. Because in his time, the best wide receiver he's produced is Khalil Shakir. That's it. Yes, he's coached Cam Camper. Yeah, he was critical for us last year in third down plays, but outside of them, outside of Cam Camper on third downs, this year, there wasn't really anyone that stood out. The best player he's coached arguably is Khalil Shakir, and the one who's had the most long-standing performance from his tutelage. And he's had a lot of receivers, and so far that's the best one he's coached, or that has shown promise and shown great attributes from Matt Miller's coaching from the Broncos. I was willing to give him a mulligan for this year, for the season, because you look back to after the Fiesta Bowl, we looked like we would have a hell of a great receiving core this year, with Prince John and Austin Bolt and Chris Marshall, if he would really be the kind of player that we were thinking he was. And that did show glimpses of this year. And even like Latrell Caples, we were hoping he would be more of a leader in the room and really showed like the kind of leadership boys you'd expect from a 6-year player with ball control, with catching the ball, and with his mind, not committing stupid penalties, stuff like that. Again with Matt Lauder, because Matt Miller was also in charge of the pass game coordinator too. Maybe thinking we could give Matt Lauder more involved, but in terms of other receivers, like Ben Ford, he came on pretty strongly to begin the year. He was looking a bit like a reliable target as well, and Chase Penry. Then you had new guys like, again, Quentin Brown and Cam Bates. Well, newer, like he was on team last year, but didn't see much. But you think would have gotten more. But again, like soon after the bowl game last year, 2024, Prince Strong entered the portal and ultimately decided to go to USC. Of note of that, he, in the past week, announced that he would re-enter the portal, so maybe Boise State should try to get him back to get that kind of firepower back. Because he was impressive, especially on like some third down diamond catches and some heroic plays. We could really use that going next year. Then, during spring ball, Austin Bolt was dismissed from the team for too many occurrences of team violations, and over the summer it turns out that he did get arrested in Boise for like some domestic violence or something like that kind of stuff. Then again, like early in the season, Ben Ford got injured for the year. Hopefully we can get him medical redshirt. And as I mentioned, Chris Marshall did show that bad side of him that ultimately got him kicked out of the SEC schools with his mentality, of compounding a bad play in a game, getting frustrated, and multiple drop balls, and losing his cool about being subbed in for with the coaching staff, if he can beat the NFL caliber receiver, because he, I think, has a year of eligibility left. He'll probably come back next year if he can't be the player that really can be and really get his mind locked down tight. He could be a superstar for us. We need a new wide receiver coach. Yeah, but if it was for that stuff, like this wide receiver crew, probably would have been really dang good. But because of those scenes, the wide receiver group did take a bit of hit this year. So that's why I would have said, like I would have given Miller a mulligan. Yes, but I think, I do wish him all the best of luck with Wazoo, except of course when we play them, do we want to shut down him and his receiver crew and to pick their quarterback off a lot. And yes, beating Kirby Moore, Kellensboro, next year in Pac-12 play. And that's enough about Matt Miller. And that, I think, another coach that really needs to be looked at is Stacy Collins, because the special teams play has not been up to standard. It definitely has not. That was also part of our staple, was great special teams play, elite field goal kicking, elite kickoff coverage, and great returns, like Gaver Williams or like Austin Pettis. We have not had that since Stacy Collins has come back. Back-to-back years with at least one kick six allowed. A lot of poor starting positions for us on returns, including some muff punts as well. So I definitely think Stacy Collins needs to be reevaluated if he's a great fit for us, and if he's really the special teams guru that he was before he went to Penn State, or if he got a little curse from Penn State and maybe we need to get rid of him. And the other one I'd say is Nate Potter. Yes, this is his first year, but I think he got thrust into it too soon. I think he should have been like Co-Will-See for a few years before being given the reins fully alone. I think for this upcoming year it should be Zach Hill as a main and Nate Potter be Co-Will-See for this upcoming year and maybe the year after. Because again, Zach Hill, when he was the OC, we had a fun offense. Yeah, we're doing gadget or trick plays. We're also putting up points like nobody's business. It could get a lot of yards per game too. So I definitely think that Nate Potter will benefit tremendously as a co-OC next year, maybe the year after that, under Zach Hill before being given free reign again. I do think it was a little bit of a mistake to give Nate Potter, in hindsight, the full reins after just 1 year of tutelage of being an offensive coordinator. He definitely needs to have more years, at least 1 to 2 more years of being co-offensive coordinator and learning from other people, and not be the offensive coordinator full reign. He definitely needs to have someone else still teach him things about being an offensive coordinator. So those are the only coaching changes I think we need. I mean, Spencer's still, I think, our coach, but he definitely needs to change his approach maybe a little bit. I mean, he has said that he is really loyal to his quarterbacks and doesn't really want to go on the portal, but I think, I equate him with George Washington as a commander, like a hell of a great motivator and a great recruiter, but when it comes to actual battlefield IQ, like battle IQ and results on battlefield, especially earlier on, like when we were going up against the British regulars on pitched battles on the battlefield, we struggled, and ultimately we sucked under George Washington. Because even when he was a British commander, he wasn't that good with the battlefield IQ. Especially early on the Revolution. But we got better, and he got better, when he brought people over who have more extensive battlefield IQ, especially against the British regulars, the British Navy, and the British Marines. Like Baron von Steuben and Marquis de Lafayette. Once we brought them over and they aided George Washington and George Washington got better because of that, we started kicking British ass, and that's part of how we won the Revolution. And so what I mean by this, the times he really himself did great was like the Battle of Trenton, which was a surprise attack against the Hessians that were caught with their pants down on Christmas Eve, or reality, early morning Christmas Day. But in the lesser battles, when it wasn't, against some more formidable British forces, the main British forces, George looked pretty good. And the reason why I say that is because against G5, especially Mountain West, and like the middle of pack, and even sometimes the upper echelon of G5, he looks like the version of George Washington of like the Trenton, Battle of Trenton, and some of the smaller battles. But when it comes to taking on, like the bigger schools, like the power schools, and schools that have vastly better resources than that we do, he looks like the major pitch battles version of George Washington, in which case we were getting routed. So I think he definitely needs to bring in, like Baron von Steuben and Marquis de Lafayette, who know how to beat the British, or in this case, the power conference teams and the upper echelon of G5 and the power conference teams. The only way you do that is by getting coaches to come in from those schools, or get players from the portal, including quarterback. I think we should get a quarterback from the portal, like a 1 to 2 year quarterback, or for every other position too on the field. Why not? The more experience, the more Baron von Steuben and Marquis de Lafayette we get from the portal, who have extensive history playing against other Power 5s or against the British Army in this case, in this analogy, the better. Because they can help him get our program back to where it was, being the Davids and the Goliath giant killers. But part of that has to do with having people in the program, not only coaches but also players, who have experience playing a lot against that kind of team. And especially who can come over here with extensive knowledge of, okay, here's how they run their practice. Here's how we can elevate our practices and our drills to get up to that level. So that way, we are much more competitive and can win at a higher rate. And I'd say we need to do that for every position. Every position as well. We need to get at least one portal player per position. So like, the quarterback definitely to help push Maddox to even become better. Hopefully, fingers crossed, he can become better. Same Max Cuthbert, and same with the incoming freshmen we got coming in that are highly talented. Because again, if they get that tutelage from a one-year grad transfer portal quarterback from the power level, from the power 4, power 2 level, that would be awesome. That would be great experience for the younger guys. And also really help push Maddox, if he really wants to be the quarterback next year, to really push us, say, you know what, I have to significantly get better for us to achieve our goals of win the Pac-12 and playing and win the college football playoff. Because this year he stunk when it came to that, especially the latter part. Again, in his career, he has stunk against the power conference teams, which more likely will play if we play in the college football playoff. He has proven himself not to be the quarterback for us when it comes to playing the power conference teams. Only G5 Mountain West teams he looks good to great against. Again, Max Cuthbert, as a sophomore, has only really played in a few games with meaningful minutes and stuff like that. So that's where I think, like quarterback, we do need to get like maybe a grad transfer, especially from a power 4/power 2 school that can help elevate our quarterback room. Same thing with wide receivers. I mean, Prince John, we get him back. He has some valuable knowledge and experience about playing against, that caliber kind of team that we want to beat, like the USCs of the world. Same thing with like tight end, O-line, D-line, linebacker, secondary players, special teams players. We need, say at least one portal player, one grad or 1 to 2 year portal player per each position from a power conference team. I believe that is how we can get back to the standard that we are known for of being the Goliath giant killers. I mean, I love the fact that we're a developmental team, and I agree with that philosophy of you develop players from high school who want to come here, and we could develop them like the best of them. I mean, again, like, Khalil Shakir came in from high school. He's still playing the NFL. Kellen Moore came in from high school. He played a little bit in the NFL, and he's having success as an NFL head coach. Leighton Vander Esch walked on, played for Boise State, playing the NFL. So, so we can develop with the best of them. But in this day and age, unfortunately, that might not be enough if we want to be serious about winning the conference title year in, year out, and playing in and winning in the CFP. We have to get with the times, including Spencer Danielson. He needs to realize, that he needs Baron von Stuyvesant, he needs Marquis de Lafayette. He needs guys from the portal, from the power conference teams, to come in for as grad transfer for 2 years, 1 to 2 year guys, to elevate those rooms and help get the coaches and get the other players to be like, this is how power conference teams operate. This is how they have success. These are the drills they have. These are the kind of players they have. This is how we can beat them. So I think that would really be very beneficial for the Broncos going into next year. This very next game they have to start up the year is on the road in Eugene, Oregon at Alton Stadium against the Oregon Ducks. And right out the bat, they have a really tough game. And the very next home game, their home opener, is against Memphis, and they're a pretty solid AAC, American Athletic Conference school. And last time we played them, they beat us. So yeah, so I'd say those are biggest needs. Again, I'd say get a wide receiver coach who has experience coaching in the power level, and going in portal, getting transfers as 1 or 2 year guys from power conference schools in portal for each position to help the players out, to help them develop at an even higher level than what we are currently doing. I think if you do that next year, we could definitely compete for the Pac-12 conference title, but also have way better showings at Oregon, against Memphis, against the power conference teams. Maybe win a game of the CFP next year. Who knows? But if we go par for the course with how Spencer has been, I don't think we will. I mean, we can win the Pac-12, but we will embarrass ourselves against Oregon and against a power conference team in the college football playoff. It's time Spencer wakes up, smells the roses, and adjusts his strategy a little bit and gets portal players from the power conference teams, including that for a position, including the quarterback room, just to get better competition, just to elevate those rooms even higher than they've been. He does that, I'd say we have a greater chance of beating teams like Oregon next year and winning a CFP game next year. Getting back to being the Davids who beat the Goliaths. That's what I think needs to happen next year. And I also do think we need to reevaluate Stacey Collins. If the special teams play is about the same last year it has been the past two, next year, then it needs to be gone at the end of the season next year. Because special teams play has been way below standard. Way below our standard. So again, I'll just leave it at that because I think this is probably about an hour long now. Oh yeah, it's over an hour. Yeah, so I hope y'all have a wonderful Merry Christmas, and I will see y'all in the next episode. Until then, go Broncos.